Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome everyone to OpenShift.tv. I am Chris Short, Principal Technical Marketing Manager on the OpenShift team at Red Hat. I'm also a CNCF ambassador. If you don't know what that is, please check out cncf.io/ambassadors. I am joined today by J.R. Morgan from Red Hat and Cody Hill from Packet.net, or just Packet, I guess, these days. And we're here for a special bare metal session. So JR, please tell us what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we're going to be actually provisioning, and we've actually shown this on Twitch before, but today we're going to be doing it fully automated, is laying down a full OpenShift 4 cluster, and then also laying down OpenShift Container Storage on top of that bare metal cluster, and then demoing OpenShift Virtualization, all in probably about 45 minutes. And then in that time that we're kind of covering those topics, we'll also kick off provisioning for a fresh cluster as well. So we do have one kind of pre-baked to save a little bit of time. Yeah.
Awesome. Sounds great. And I do apologize for our late start. I was having some technical issues, surprisingly. Every box I touched went to crap the second I started OBS on it. So, yeah. The cloud is great for many things, and it is great for standing up new boxes. So thank you, cloud. Cody, you want to introduce yourself for everybody here that's watching?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Cody Hill. I'm the field CTO at Packet, now an Equinix company. And I work with our largest customers to do design and help them with automation and really try to fit our bare metal solution into their environment. So happy to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you.
Yeah.
So JR, what are we spinning up here exactly?
Let me go ahead and share out, if that's all right. Let me just confirm when that works.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, there's no slides for this presentation today, folks. It's all console and terminal. So yeah, there's no slide deckery happening. Cool.
So I do actually have. Is that sharing yet, or?
Yeah, it's sharing.
It is.
Okay, great. And the other thing I'll kind of point everyone to first is going to be the Packet deployment repo for this. If you're interested in doing it yourself, I'm not sure if somebody could post it in, but I will drag it over here because it's kind of going to be a first step to start defining some of the prerequisite information for deploying it. It is kind of an opinionated installer at this point in time, so it is leveraging Terraform exclusively, but it requires one, a Packet project or Packet account, and then also a Cloudflare account for any of the DNS entries that get created. Really, I've already got a lot of these variables pre-baked, so I will review some of those, really the important ones more than anything else. I did kind of hide some of the more sensitive information, but once you have that Packet project, you have a Cloudflare account, you're just going to access or really define any of the API tokens that are going to be required to provision in there. You're also going to tell the, or at least provide the variables for counts on how many compute nodes, how many control plane nodes, which should be 3 by default, that you want to provision. Also cluster base domain, cluster names, really any of the prerequisites you're already going to have to deploy OpenShift anywhere. You're going to define that either in a TF-vars file, or you can define that straight in the variable definitions for Terraform. So it's really up to you. Just makes it easier to source those variables in a TF-vars file, so you can modify it quickly, easily, and then change it if you're looking to stand up a second cluster. Because this is bare metal, we're also deploying RHEL 7 load balancer in the front end. That's something we're kind of looking to improve in the near future. So right now it's just a single RHEL 7 base load balancer running HA proxy, also running Nginx, some of the installer artifacts. But this cluster size that I'm actually going to stand up, it's pretty standard. So again, 3 masters or 3 control plane nodes, 3 compute nodes on there. It will provision a temporary bootstrap node. Again, if anyone's familiar with the OpenShift 4 install process, it's going to be pretty standard. It is also going to reference, but not transfer a private key file. This is for really accessing some of the hosts after they've been provisioned on Packet. But once these are defined, you can really just apply the Terraform automation. So again, I did mention I kind of have one pre-baked already. Let me drag this over. going to show you. So this is the cluster that is up right now. We're actually going to deploy a whole separate 6-node cluster, and we'll kind of monitor that in the background as I kick it off.
Cool.
So these should be sourced. I'm just going to throw in a Terraform auto apply or auto approve. We're going to time it as well. It takes about 45 minutes for a 6-node cluster. With the OpenShift 4.5 release, you can actually drop that 6-node count down to 3 nodes and still actually have it supported, which is great.
Nice.
So again, yeah, it's kind of nice to at least keep the cost down if you're looking for development cluster.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to mention that we had, if you guys wanted to try this along with us, we created a short link that will take you to the Packet page, which then our team will take care of you and give you some free credits. I think $350 worth of free cloud credits. So bearmet.al/OpenShift. Want to put that in the chat there. I'll go ahead and throw it in there. But yeah, bearmet.al/OpenShift, and
Nice.
go ahead and sign up there. Our team will give you the credits, and then you can actually try this along with us.
That's awesome. I need to set that up as like a free command thing that I should run. I'm just going to bookmark that for our fellow audience members. Should they ever ask for, hey, where can I get some bare metal from?
And like one of the drivers why we even kind of created this is because again, actually, I think it was James Labaki. He actually, we saw it on Twitch before, but he had stepped through standing up a full bare metal OpenShift cluster on Packet. We wanted to automate it. Really, our driver for it was demos without having to worry about nested virtualization, but also demoing not just OpenShift virtualization, but OpenShift container storage on bare metal as well. So we're going to step through that. That is actually located in the extras folder inside of that same repository to make it quick and easy once you do have a cluster stood up to really stand up those extra components. We also have some automation. If you're using Let's Encrypt, it's really like single script kickoffs to provision any Let's Encrypt certificates for your domain on your freshly installed OpenShift cluster. Just really shortcuts more than anything. We also have some documentation on there for next step. Scaling on Packet is extremely easy. So once a cluster has been stood up, you really just have to change those same variables for counts to increase your compute capacity, which is really nice as well because it makes it easy to increase your storage capacity if you're running OpenShift Container Storage later. So just as easy to scale compute or storage at the same time or independently. So this is that vanilla cluster. Again, I mentioned we did kind of pre-bake one to save a little bit of time. It does have 3 control plane nodes, 3 worker nodes on there. I've already sourced my TFRs file specific to this cluster. So while we're provisioning the second cluster, this should go just fine as it's bootstrapping first the load balancer, then the bootstrap node, as well as the control plane, and lastly compute. So we don't really want to interfere with that. We'll revisit it at the end just to confirm that everything got stood up and really can kind of pick up where we're about to go on laying down some of the extras on top of it. I have already deployed the Let's Encrypt certificate on there, so I can at least validate that. The only thing I've done is deploy that Let's Encrypt certificate. So really, like next steps, once you have a fresh cluster on Packet, you're probably going to want to start hosting some workloads on it. The automation by default does actually provide NFS hosted on that load balancer and sets up, if you want it to, a NFS provisioner as well. So there is some persistent storage available without laying down OpenShift Container Storage. That said, it's not robust storage. It's also not really meant for handling any of the virtualized workloads that we really wanted to demo on there. So our next step was always kind of automating that OpenShift Container Storage deployment on top. So go
awesome.
ahead and use there.
So you deployed it. It's 6 nodes. Do you need to register it at all or anything? Or
So no registration required. It actually kind of auto bootstraps with a 60-day trial.
okay, right.
60 days. If you want to keep running OpenShift, you do need a valid subscription associated with the cluster. Really, and the same kind of applies for OpenShift Container Storage. If you're looking to run that, you do need a valid subscription for support. But yeah, nothing's actually required to stand it up and use it for 60 days. There's really no registration needed. The cluster auto registers, and you can register it later with OpenShift Cluster Manager.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there is some prereqs that you need to do to set up to get the Red Hat key and get the Cloudflare keys and all of that. Do we want to cover any of that today to kind of talk about what you needed to get up and running?
That is a good call. So yeah, honestly, it's not a whole lot required for that, but we actually have some really good documentation on where you need to go specifically to get like the API keys for Packet or to generate or even register for a Cloudflare account and then generate an API token for Cloudflare. Same thing goes for the OpenShift Cluster Manager API token. By obtaining this, it'll auto-generate a pull secret for you, which you can kind of reuse later. You only need to do this all once, even if you're standing up multiple clusters. And again, I'm really just using a single Cloudflare domain, free DNS on their free tier plan, and just kind of provisioning fake subdomains and fake cluster names as I need to deploy new resources.
Yeah, so that's the one sunk cost, right? Is you have to have a GoDaddy domain or something like that to get set up, but then it's free Cloudflare, free credits from Packet, free Red Hat account. So yeah, correct. Anybody can try this out.
Tried to make it as easy as possible. But yeah, really it's just, I'd say the Cloudflare, and then you do need an RHN account in order to grab that cluster manager token. So if you don't have one of those, make sure you register. But once you have that, you'll need to do it once. And then you should be go for deploying one or more clusters. Let's go ahead and switch back here. So really, and we try to eliminate as many of the dependencies on like specific products or technologies as possible. So I was very tempted to try to use Ansible for this, but I tried to make it as clean and easy as possible. So again, if you're leveraging any of the TFVARs, those get reused in these standard just bash scripts. But this makes it pretty quick and easy to set up OCS, set up OpenShift Virtualization without having to do a whole lot. I do prefer, the more robust templating offered with Ansible, but we're doing some pretty easy variable substitution in these bash scripts to kind of provision these services quick, easily, without a whole lot of prerequisites that you need to install on your box. So again, these are just really initializing the operators for OpenShift Container Storage. We just kind of wrap those up in a script. We're also kind of connecting to each one of the worker nodes. We're kind of reusing the compute nodes as our OpenShift Container Storage nodes. They have actually quite a bit of storage. We're using the C3 medium flavors or server types for any of the compute nodes. Actually, I'm sorry, C2 for the compute nodes in this case. But they have plenty of storage on there to accommodate OpenShift Container Storage. We just need to initialize the operators and kind of discover what disks are available for consumption. So really anything that's not being used when the server gets stood up. So,
cool.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I've already kind of provisioned the local storage, subscribed to the necessary operators. So right now I'm just actually gonna deploy OCS. And I'll switch over to that script as well.
So OCS, OpenShift Container Storage, very, very useful for all kinds of cloud native storage solutions. We can have some folks on from the OCS team later in the month, potentially, if folks are interested in more of that. Just let me know.
And honestly, like I wanted OCS, not just for OpenShift Virtualization, but there's some extras included as well. Like if you're interested in evaluating Quay, we have kind of scripts to automatically deploy Quay, the Quay bridge operator, the Quay container security operator as well. All of that really leveraging OCS storage. That said, you can kind of change some of the default storage classes being used by those scripts. If you still want to leverage NFS and it's supported, you don't have to use OCS. We tried to make it as flexible as possible.
Right. OCS just kind of shortcuts it for you, though.
It takes a lot of the effort out of it. It also makes it easier to kind of get a little bit of insight into your storage provisioning, storage consumption from the dashboard. So whenever we like kind of initialize
Yeah.
the cluster,
Hey, JR.
I can fix that. I can fix that. Hang on.
Okay.
That's
Fair
me.
enough. Yeah, the bottom of the window is getting cut off. It looks like we can fix it.
Yeah, no, it's because I wanted to have our heads on there, and now I don't. So there we go. Done. Or it should be in just a second, as you know, the stream catches up.
and really like as I'm like provisioning and setting up these operators, you can monitor it from the dashboard as well. I don't have a storage cluster initialized right now. So again, like OCS is still initializing at this point. It's bootstrapping the project and the resources that it's going to be needing to actually set up that cluster. It should be far enough along for me to go ahead and just initialize the storage cluster definition that I have set up right here. Again, it's pretty base cluster. I'm not doing a whole lot of customization. I'm really following most of the documentation when it comes to this. And this is referencing the local block class that I actually provisioned in step 0 here. So I'm going to kick off the last one. And this one will take a little bit to initialize since it's kind of spinning up a full Ceph cluster in the background. And if I get an error from this, it just typically means that the operator hasn't fully initialized yet. But
hang on just a second. We had a Zoom issue on the streaming rig. So, of course. Should be good there, though. Oh, the joys of live streaming.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah. I think we're looking at all of the, this is the Packet user interfaces. These are all the physical bare metal nodes that we have deployed inside of Packet today. So you can see we have a handful of those C3 mediums that we've deployed. These are both of those clusters, right? And then we have the Go Z cluster is the one that we're using now, and then the one that we have pre-deployed is the Packet cluster, right? The OG Packet. And yes, you can see that the masters are all C3s, Bootstrap's a C3 as well as the load balancers, and then we have C2 mediums, just a different server type that are slightly cheaper to use for those worker nodes.
Cool.
And it took it a second to actually initialize, but our storage cluster definition did get created. So it's going to take a little bit for it to initialize. We can, again, monitor that like on the dashboard. From the overview page, you should see like a new persistent storage tab once that's there. It's thinking.
Think. Paint dry, paint dry, paint dry. So what's actually, do you know what's actually going on behind the scenes here? I mean, spinning up all the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's really going to start, again, bootstrapping a full Ceph cluster almost from scratch. The Ceph mom pods, Ceph OSDs. This is going to leverage, I'm not sure why my dashboard's going quite a bit slower, but it'll reference all of the PVs that were previously created when we initialized the local storage operator as well. Once this loads back, I can actually check. But you do see the new tabs after we kind of initialize the storage cluster. So we have a persistent storage and object service tab on the dashboard now, which is great. It's dragging. I'm sure it's my connection. I have like the slowest internet. But it actually looks like it did initialize okay. When that happens, we should see really all of the replicated storage available now once the capacity is there. Still looks like it's kind of setting up data resiliency. This is going to default to replication factor of 3 whenever OpenShift Container Storage gets deployed. So again, we could really have one of those nodes go down completely and still have access to our backend storage. But it does take it a minute to actually initialize. I'm sure I'm kind of overloading it, doing this and having that cluster provision at the same time as well. Although it's probably more my internet than anything else. Just kind of switching back to the cluster standup. It's really just waiting. The nodes themselves have been provisioned. Right now, it's just really waiting for the Bootstrap node to start listening on TCP 6443. before it kind of moves on to the next step in the OpenShift install process. So again, the whole thing from start to finish takes about 45 minutes. And then depending on what you end up wanting to deploy afterwards, probably takes about 30 minutes to actually lay down OpenShift Container Storage, kind of deploy your Let's Encrypt certificates, redeploy the registry with backend storage, and lay down OpenShift Virtualization as well. But again, it's still kind of initializing everything behind the scenes. Let's see.
Yeah.
While that's going.
So yeah, while that's going, if you guys want to interact with us a bit, we have a Slack channel that you can jump on and
Yes.
talk to JR and ask him how all this stuff works, or you know, chat with some of the Packet folks. So I just put it in the chat. It's slack.packet.com, and we have a Red Hat OpenShift channel, community channel there, so that if you're having problems getting this stood up, if you exhausted your $350 in credits, you can make your plea for more if you have a great use case. So whatever you need to do, go ahead and jump in there and chat with us.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that I'm in there too, because we have enough people using Packet. So yeah, happy to help whenever I can.
So I'm going to go ahead and initialize the OpenShift virtualization operator as well. There's no harm in doing that right now. I'm not going to deploy a sample VM yet. By the end of this, though, we are going to have actually a Windows 2019 VM up and running. We do have a sample script on kind of how to do that. To take a major shortcut, I'm actually leveraging one of the libvirt vagrant boxes to deploy an evaluation of Windows 2019. But we'll have that up and running by the end of this once OCS is fully deployed and operating. So we can check on that as well. We'll see if the resiliency is there. Might be going a little faster. There we go.
Whereabouts are you based, JR?
I am just north of Gainesville, Florida. So,
okay, so just north of Gainesville. Internet might not be the fastest, but you know, go Gators.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, internet is definitely not the fastest, but you know, we have a lot of farms in the area.
Yeah.
So we actually do see all the storage was initialized on here. Still waiting to populate all the metrics, but we do have enough capacity now to actually deploy a virtual machine. So once this OpenShift virtualization operator actually initializes.
Amy in chat says she misses Burrito Brothers.
Oh. The place is way too popular. I'm hoping to weather the storm for the shutdowns and pandemic.
Here's
yeah,
a good
anyone
question.
Has any questions?
Yeah, here's a good one. Can swap be enabled on OpenShift and bare metal deployments?
I think it can be enabled and customized.
Right. Yeah.
You do that through any of the ignition files prior to deployment, but yes, you can.
Yeah, you have to do it prior to deployment. That's the biggest thing, I think. I don't know if you can change it after the fact. I don't think you can easily.
No, it's much easier to do it. If you needed to do something like that,
way easier to do it on provision than try and do it on the fly. Yeah.
And we actually do have some templates in there because we are making some customizations. So if you needed to kind of tweak any of those settings, you can look at some of the modules that we have for provisioning, and again, make any adjustments you need for the ignition files, and then it shouldn't be that hard. I was trying to see if I had one handy. I don't think I do.
An ignition file? Oh, I can find one somewhere, I'm sure. Or if my team is watching, they can throw one to me real quick, maybe. I know where some are hiding.
So I know Kubernetes, and I'm the Packet guy, right? Not the OpenShift guy, but I know Kubernetes has issues with enabling swap. Was that why that question was asked? Does OpenShift solve that problem, and or just doesn't have that same type of issue?
I'm thinking we've probably potentially solved that problem with FCOS, or not FCOS, RCOS, Red Hat Core OS, or container operating system, that we base OpenShift on. But if that was a question around upstream versus OpenShift, I'm not sure, because to be honest with you, I've never tried to run swap on a system with Kubernetes before. So yeah.
Well, it doesn't like it. The kubelet gets
apparently it doesn't
angry.
like it. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, so prerequisite is disable swap. There's been a bug around since, I want to say 2017 around this, and the solution was disable swap. And I don't think that bug's been fixed upstream. So I was wondering if Red Hat had something they did around that.
Well, then actually, let me check the docs and make sure that you can actually do something with swap. Let's see.
You can with the ignition config in system D. I just
configuring your cluster.
Actually, not in the Twitch stream, so I need to log in.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You can drop it in the Zoom chat if you want. I can pass it over.
Yeah, and I just wonder if the Red Hat Core OS operating system allows you to enable swap, would the containers under the covers be able to take advantage of it, or not?
Right,
so
like it's probably the
bug with Kubernetes
OS taking advantage of it, somehow, not necessarily the kubelet itself, if that bug still exists, unless we did patch it and we didn't pass it up for some reason. I'm sure we tried if we did patch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see the use case for, especially when you get into virtualization with KubeVirt or what's Red Hat call it?
OpenShift Virtualization made it real simple.
OpenShift, yeah. So yeah, once you get into doing virtualization, swap's going to become, if you're going to be doing any over provisioning or any of that, having swap there is going to be pretty useful. So that was a big deal when KubeVirt came out, was you couldn't really do over provisioning with it. So yeah, if you solve that, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking for documentation. I have 6 results from all the OCP docs talking about swap. Let's see.
So somebody just posted the OpenShift admin guide recommends disabling swapped as of April 2020.
Well, there you go. That's very recent. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. Disable swap, folks.
And so what we're probably seeing right now is there's some upgrades happening behind the scenes as storage is being deployed. So it's degraded, but it should be ready. So I did actually kind of start laying down the groundwork for, it's not quite ready yet. I don't actually have, my storage class name. Again, I kind of made this as flexible as possible. So if you don't want to use OpenShift Container Storage, you can override this and leverage either host path provisioner, which does get set up with the CMD laydown, or you can use OCS, and to a very limited extent, possibly NFS, but I wouldn't recommend it. I had nothing but problems out of that. So, okay. So that actually at least let me define my Windows 2019 VM. And we're going to watch from the dashboard as that kind of gets provisioned and imported.
Sweet.
And I mentioned before, again, I'm taking like a major shortcut by leveraging one of the existing Vagrant boxes for libvirt. It doesn't have all of the cloud init utilities pre-installed in it. So ideally, you would probably want something like that to take advantage of everything OpenShift Virtualization has to offer. But it is a nice, quick, and easy way to try it. So I see it's actually importing my root disk, and that's actually staged on the Bastion host. I do actually have periodically the image changes, but I do have a script that will auto import this disk for you as well. So we can kind of monitor the status of the import right here.
Cool. I have a technical answer to the swap problem. If swap memory is enabled for a node, that node cannot detect that it is under memory pressure. for whatever reason. To take advantage of memory-based evictions, you must disable swap. So there you go, folks. There's a technical reason in the kubelet somewhere why that is. The bowels of Kubernetes code.
Yeah, I've run into that in the wild before.
Yeah, I mean, I've never even thought of it, to be honest with you. So I haven't run into it in the wild before.
Yeah, so fun times. The reason that's hammered into my head is I had to rebuild all of the OS images that we used for Kubernetes back in the day to not include swap. So.
Yeah, I mean,
year.
My cloud configuration days of, like turning off swap by default, I think if I've like driven that home enough for me to just say, yeah, no, don't enable it for Kubernetes because I always disable it anyway.
Right. Yeah, it looks like somebody in the chat posted that the OpenShift installer actually disables swap if you enabled it. So they're looking out for you.
Nice. There you go. Cool. Thank you. I'm not even going to try and say that name. Host name TSCH. Man. Something Cheggy. TS Cheggy. Yeah. Go with that. Xerox, Xerox 746 asks, what are we working on? We are standing up OpenShift virtualization on bare metal and Packet right now. And we're waiting for a machine to import. Not just any machine, a Windows 2019 server, you said? Right, JR?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so right now we're probably about halfway through the actual fresh cluster stand up on top of Packet. So again, we've got just a little bit left for bootstrapping to complete. I kind of have some weights added in there to make sure the OpenShift install completes successfully, which is why we're listening for TCP 6443 before we move on in the installer. Just the success rate is a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We can actually see everything did get deployed. Whenever this is done, we'll actually dispose of the bootstrap node. We no longer need that once the cluster's been deployed. But again, since we're deploying that fresh one side by side with the pre-baked cluster we had here, you'll see duplicate or similar names for each one of the clusters that we have in our single Packet project.
Yeah, it's really a kick it off and go make a sandwich type of situation, right?
Oh yeah, I mean these are
45
big
minutes.
Distributed systems you're standing up, right? Like container orchestration is not for the faint of heart, as they say. So yeah.
And then I think our VM should be just about done being imported. And so we do see the status is running. We could go drop into the console as well. We see it at least show Windows is booting or Windows is starting. Usually doesn't take that long. Oh, it did not take long. And we see we have our temporary eval Windows license as well. I am not about to try interacting with this console, so I'll connect with RDP. That does take a couple of extra steps that we have documented both in like the next steps as well as at the bottom of the script. Again, this is kind of optional that you want to expose this to the internet.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's very optional. Please don't.
Yeah.
Unless you absolutely have to.
Right.
So just switch into that project context with the OC command. And then if you don't have virt control installed, this script does pre-install it on the Bastion host as well. So there shouldn't be any issue just executing this directly from the Bastion host if you're looking to evaluate it. Again, I will kind of open this up right now. So we're exposing Service RDP on the VM that we just provisioned inside of that project. And then we can do an OC get service. We are using node port for this one, just to make it a little easier.
Yeah.
We can see that it's listing on 30393. What that means is now we can actually hit 30393 on any one of the nodes that's a cluster member. We should be able to access RDP being served on this particular VM. Start Remina. 0. This is again, like based off of a vagrant box. So when I can access that, it should just be vagrant by default for credentials, very secure.
I like it. We're going to expose
Lots
it
of
up to the internet. Might as well have a weak username and password.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, you're throwing this cluster away right after the show, right? You're not keeping this around? Yeah. Okay, totally fine.
It actually looked like my worker 0 is like in the process of updating right now, or at the very least unavailable. So I'm going to change this to worker 1.
Cool.
See if that gives me a little bit better success. Yes, much better.
It's nothing like a live demo.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
There you go. We're actually going to install, what is it, Heidi SQL on here just to test MySQL connectivity. Again, just really confirming that the VM can live side by side with containers, access any containerized workloads, whether it's MariaDB or Postgres or MongoDB. So we'll spin up a MariaDB container. Now that we have persistent storage, we can make it persistent as well, and then kind of test that connectivity from the VM. Should make it very quick and easy. Let me switch to the console. I'm in the admin console right now. I'm going to drop to the developer console, still within the same project. So just the Packet project I had set up to host these resources.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even need to wait for the topology. Should be able to go to add. Oh, my connection's not happy. There we go.
Gators? Oh.
Did I hear thunder in the background of somebody's setup?
That was
you? Okay.
Yeah.
So if suddenly you just disappear, we know why.
Yeah.
It's storming pretty bad by me as well. So.
Oh, great. This is awesome.
That's fun.
You know, hilariously, it's not my power I have to worry about. It's my ISP. Like, I don't think they have any backup at all.
Oof. Rough.
Yeah.
So I am going to change a couple of the names on here. So the service names, we'll leave it as MariaDB for the service name, but we're going to kind of force the username to vagrant. Same thing for the password. Why not? Start going with security. We'll just call the sample database Packet. Again, like if I needed to up the capacity on here, we have it now with OpenShift Container Storage. We'll let it pull down that container image. And we do see our VM living here side by side with the deployment config for MariaDB. It should not take this long to spin up either. We can go to view logs. And while that's running, we'll see if the default Internet Explorer security configuration actually lets me download this. Oh, it does. And while that's running a security scan, it finished. So I should even without even launching Heidi SQL, I should be able to at least resolve the MariaDB name from the CLI. Try. Okay, and it does, and it returns fully qualified name with my project in the cluster.local domain, which is great. So I can either use fully qualified name or even the short name to connect to that container. Looks like the container's up and running, at least back behind here. Not seeing any errors. Do not need to expose that to the internet, thankfully. We'll go new. We know the host name will resolve with either short name or long, but I'll go ahead and put the fully qualified. And then we manually set everything to Vagrant as the username and password. Database, I'll just leave that blank so we can see everything. And that should be enough to at least establish a connection. We don't really care about the connection name, but we do see it at least initialized right here. So if we needed to actually start setting up our table in here, it shouldn't be a big deal now. And our changes should persist, which is pretty nice. It's convenient.
Nice.
Should be able to save. Oops. Add some columns. Save.
What you're saying is I could run PHP from Windows and host a MySQL database on
Absolutely.
OpenShift.
Oh.
So funny story. Yeah, back in the early 2000s, I was, in the Air Force because of the .com bubble, and I was a Linux admin before joining the Air Force, right? Like, and it was nothing but Windows stuff, right? Like government stuff. So I actually ended up installing like Apache, MySQL, and PHP on a Windows server because that's what I knew and I could do it. So yeah. There you go.
In high school, we had a web development course, and that's how we did it as well.
Nice.
So
Windows was kind of just given away in the early late 90s, 2000s era. So yeah, it made sense.
In 98, yeah. Windows 98. Wow. That was a good
OS. That was a solid OS.
It was, yeah.
So actually the install's moving along as well. Right now, we're just really waiting for any of the auto approval for the certificate signing request for each one of the nodes that was provisioned. Really, when that's done, the operators are going to finish initializing and our new cluster is ready to go. You probably already see some of the nodes show up. Again, I'm connected to the pre-baked cluster we had before, so we are seeing all of the nodes right there. And it looks like my updates are still moving along across each one of the nodes, since I'm seeing that scheduling is being disabled one by one on there. It's one of the reasons why I pre-baked a cluster on here too. I notice, loves updating when you need to demo something.
Now, is that some type of OpenShift operator that's actually keeping things up to date? What is that updating going on? What does that mean?
Exactly. Yeah, it's really the operator. If it's detecting really any inconsistencies or that there's updates available for a specific service that was deployed, it's going to auto update those depending on what type of operator subscription you set up. I have kind of set this up to auto update by default, which is one of the reasons I see that. And we can monitor the status of that, but it still is likely going to be OpenShift storage, since that's the big one that we've really provisioned. I should probably make sure I'm targeting the latest one. It's actually pretty easy to update that parameter as well in the operator manifests or the subscription manifests as well. Really same thing for the version of OpenShift that gets deployed too. So 4.5 wasn't recently released, but pretty recent. So we originally, the automation was written for 4.4. We retargeted for 4.5 as soon as the latest Z stream was dropped. But you can really kind of target whatever version you want the way the automation is set up.
Nice.
But yeah, this is definitely still updating right now.
I apologize for my dog. Everybody on the stream right now. Family's coming home from playing wherever. So dog's happy and trying to tell me everything from afar. Yeah, it's a good dog.
So we can actually see. Okay, it looks like all the CSRs were approved, so this should be wrapping up pretty soon, which is quick. And because the OpenShift Container Storage operator is updating right now, you can see my actual connection to worker one, which worked fine before. It actually did get dropped. Again, we can hit that VM from any one of the nodes that's on the OpenShift SDN. So I could close out of this now that I know it's broken. Maybe. It's going to try reconnecting. Or I could just connect to another one. Same port, but.
Yeah. While you do that, there was a deal in the chat kind of asking why you would be running a Windows VM side by side inside of an OpenShift cluster. It seems like a lot of extra work they mentioned, right? Yeah. So,
well,
I'll take my non-OpenShift, non-Red Hat employee answer, then maybe you guys can correct me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but if you're in a large enterprise that's trying to refactor applications, and you have that application that runs on that Windows box, whether it's an ASP.NET app or Java or what have you, and you want to start refactoring that application to make it cloud native, you can actually deploy that monolithic app in its native ground inside of OpenShift. And then I want to break out, just like you saw JR do, the database portion. And let's now host the database in MySQL. And then, possibly you want to break out next the web layer and then part of the application layers and start breaking that into microservices very slowly instead of having to build all of it and refactor it all ahead of time into microservices and then go to Kubernetes. That's the big benefit I see. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I think of back to my days working as a DevOps manager, the DevOps team lead, whatever you want to call, that scenario. And we were migrating from a .NET application that was 10 years old and running on Windows, something unsupported, older than 2008 in some instances. And shoehorning some of those VMs into whatever we had to do, to make them work was one of the scenarios we had to solve for, right? Like some VMs had to persist after refactoring, right? Like after refactoring the app, they said, this is too critical. We don't want to touch this, but it's running on this old Windows server. So this is exactly, not that OpenShift Virtualization would support that, but if you have servers that you're running Windows workloads on and you need to move them into your container orchestration platform or a single platform, so you don't have all the different platforms that are out there and you can move them under a single pane of glass, that's kind of the game here, right? Like if you have these Windows workloads that also need to work with these Linux workloads all in one network, all in one orchestration tool, that's the big win of OpenShift virtualization. But yeah, like running PHP 3 websites from IIS and Windows NT4, that probably isn't the best thing to, use case wise, but, definitely running, like if you need MS SQL Server for some reason and you're using OpenShift already, you don't necessarily need to spin up another, virtualization platform. You can kind of do that with just OpenShift right now. That's the game.
Yeah, and managing capacity instead of having 6 different pools of compute for your virtualization capacity and then your bare metal capacity, and so you can kind of pool all that together and slice it up. I think it's a great option. Yeah,
the density you get from just moving to containers, Kubernetes, right, like is an increase from VMs. So that is an improvement that you could see across your entire, server fleet if you wanted, right? Like that increase in, compute density. It's just how you want to slice and dice your infrastructure, make it work for you. If the use case doesn't make sense to you, it's not going to be a thing for you. If it makes sense to you though, and, gears are turning, that's why we're here, right? We see folks that do this frequently. They need, they want to move to cloud native things, but they have some legacy stuff that they can't touch or they can't move. And it's in a VM somewhere and it's in some data center and, they stand up stuff around the rack that it's in to make sure no one touches it kind of thing. And, being able to just say, okay, well, it's a VM, image snapshot it over to, OpenShift virtualization is a win.
Yeah, and I guess something I hadn't really explored too, kind of on that topic. So if you do want to deploy, a Linux VM on there, there's nothing
totally possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is that there's multiple ways to deploy it. We really just kind of cover deploying it through a kind of semi-templated manifest. If you wanted to deploy that through the UI, there is a very easy to consume method to do that. So if you look back into our same project, again, it takes a little longer to do that. And let me see if I can't find a CentOS cloud image, since I don't have a rel qcal readily available right now. But this one should be fine.
I like it.
Yeah.
This one should work.
Yeah, why not?
Just pull it off the shelf.
So we can go new with Wizard here. And again, if you already have a QCOW image, it does support specific formats. And I'm actually just going to pull this directly because my internet could not handle actually serving this up from my house. I'll pull this directly from cloud.centos.org.
Right.
We could do that pretty quick and easy. CentOS 7, probably not be deploying that one. We'll select flavor size medium. Definitely server. Call it C7. Should be able to go to next. Here, while we're waiting, I'll stick with the defaults on network interfaces. Again, this will be just standard pod networking. Root disk size, that should be adequate. I'm going to bump it up just in case. Go to 25. We can afford that. Select the storage class that we'd like. We'll go with CephFS. That should be fine. Actually, for CephFS, we'll go CephRBD. Next. I believe I already have one of these. Call it exactly the same. Let's see if I can cat out. Oh, and it looks like the cluster actually finished provisioning already as well.
Sweet.
So this was the first one that we deployed. We have our Terraform output here, and it's going to let you access the console. We haven't actually set up any of the Let's Encrypt certificates, but again, it is kind of ready to go. So we're going to get that lovely error message about a security risk ahead. So we'll finish deploying the CentOS image first. I don't even think
you might want to change that password since we just streamed this out live to everybody on a public URL.
Probably. We'll get disposed of immediately after.
Oof. If you're brave enough to jump in there and start mucking with it live, you can do it. But please don't. Yeah. We'll find you. I'll find you.
Sorry. There we go. Just going to paste this in. Open with. Load. There we go. All right, next. Don't need a CD-ROM on there, so we can just move along. Create a virtual machine. We'll start it on creation. So you should see the
How will I load Doom?
Procedure kind of happen with it importing the disk. Might take it a little bit longer because it is importing directly from CentOS mirrors.
Yeah, so it's pulling it from the internet using some Go app. Yep. Is there a floppy disk since there is no CD-ROM? Yeah, you can add a CD-ROM. I mean, you can put a CD-ROM on there. Is there a floppy disk is a good question, though, because some people do need that.
Yeah.
I don't think so. So
there's libvirt, so it might be maybe not in the UI, but it is libvirt. Libvirt does support floppy if you had that need. So from the actual YAML manifest for KubeVirt, you can actually do that and define that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was pretty quick import, so we can see it booting now on the console. Whenever it is finally booted, we should actually be able to SSH into it.
Nice. Did you pull a cloud image? That's usually smaller.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's the best one to do. Let's see. All right, So there it is. It has our host name that we pre-configured. If I wanted to customize the cloud init parameters as well, I could have done that to go ahead and like pre-install any packages to actually get that VM ready. But, oh, sorry, I need vert control to actually expose that host. So in similar fashion, exposing it for 3389, we're going to do the same. This one's just called C7. And TCP 22. And service name C7 SSH. We're going to do node port again for this. Should have the same context, so we should see it. See get service in the same project.
So again, folks, he just opened port 22 to the world. We do not recommend that.
Don't do it.
But this is for demo purposes. Yes.
That's right.
Someone's asking if we lost audio.
I don't. No, I can still hear audio on the
guys.
live stream.
Sweet.
Also hear a helicopter flying over, so that's fun.
Oops. Let's see. Did not like that. Oh. Sorry about that. I forget what is it CentOS on there or
Yeah, I think it is CentOS.
Mm-hmm.
I always forget what the user is on that one. So there we are. So we should have sudo on there too. So you know that way we can actually delete the root file system before somebody gets on there, just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like kind of just shows you another method to actually deploy a virtualized workload. Again, really good if you don't have fully cloud native workloads in your environment, or like Cody mentioned, if you have something legacy where you still need to run it in a VM, it just won't work in a container. It's a really good alternative to having to split it out to a separate virtualization solution where you can just host it right on the same OpenShift cluster where you might already have some of your workloads containerized. And it looks like the cluster kind of provisioned successfully. If I went back to this terminal, exit out of this, clear, see get nodes. That might actually show my other cluster. Yeah, wrong one. We'll switch.
Whoops.
We don't want to do anything on that cluster. It was working fine. Okay. So this one we can do OC get nodes. We should see the new one. Everything's ready to really keep moving.
Cool.
The source. And then I can, again, leverage those same scripts to start configuring a lot of the prereqs that you would probably at least want to set up for a new cluster. So again, in this case, I'm really just configuring all of the Let's Encrypt certificates for the cluster. It's going to be a full bash method to do it. So it's using the acme.sh. Oh, I don't think I actually had that sourced right.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's a good way not to do it.
We screw up, so you don't have to.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. Well, let me make sure. I think the problem was I went relative on my path. So let's go.
Oh, well, that'll do it. Remember, folks, even people that do this every day fail at this sometimes.
It's very true, and badly. Let me see what I got here. We'll go with an absolute path this time. All right, should work fine this time around.
Nah, that's what they all say.
Where's the fun in that, though? Cool.
Sweet.
Nice.
There we go. much better. All right. So if I at least go back, I should get a clear, might take it a second. We're going to try reopening the console, at least confirm we don't get a scary certificate error. You loaded a different incognito window.
Not scary.
Still nothing yet. Might take it a second. I guess any questions?
No, there's not a lot of questions in chat right now. I've kind of been asking you on the fly. I'm just going to go back through real quick. Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about gators. So yeah, Cody, if you want to drop that packet link for folks again.
Yeah, for sure.
You can do that, and then all you need is a pull secret from try.openshift.com or openshift.com/try, and you'll be on your way.
Yeah, absolutely. So dropping in the chat right now that deal, it's bearmet.al/OpenShift, and that'll get you $350 in packet credits.
Sweet.
So go ahead and sign up there. Tell them that you saw us on the Twitch stream, the Red Hat Twitch stream. They'll apply the credits to your account, and you can go to town. And you'll have to sign up for the Red Hat portal and get your Cloudflare account. But yeah, watch the stream again, and you can see all that.
Yeah, sign up for some creds, build you some clusters, y'all.
Yep, looks like our cert deployed just fine, and like now at this point we're really like back to square one where we started with the vanilla clusters. So on a fresh one, you could just lay down OCS. If you want to test out Quay, any of the accompanying Quay operators, or test out OpenShift Virtualization, you're kind of ready to go. Let's see. I was worried we wouldn't have enough time.
Oh, come on. We got this. Even with technical issues.
True.
You're kind of excelling at this point.
Let me copy my password real quick, hopefully without showing everybody this time. Let's see if we can at least log in.
Yeah. Somebody else asked, where do I go? Where's a good place to jump in and learn about OpenShift as a developer? One place you could go that would be a friendly spot is to, go to the Slack channel, slack.packet.com, go to the Red Hat OpenShift. That'll at least help you get this stood up and get some assistance.
Mm-hmm.
But where else can they go if they want?
Learn.openshift.com is a good place to go to figure out all the intricacies. I know that our developer advocacy team has done a lot of work on that site to make sure that there's content, Katacoda-based content there for you to like run through and kick the tires on things that might also answer some questions that you have. There's numerous places to go on the internet for OpenShift help, including the Kubernetes Slack. There's an OpenShift channel or Red Hat. Let me double check on that. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm in it. I just don't know what it's called. It's Kubernetes Slack, OpenShift. Is it OpenShift or Red Hat is the question. OpenShift users and then OpenShift dev are the two channels you can check out. So for OpenShift development, obviously you'll see it in the dev channel. For OpenShift users, feel free to ask questions there all you want in the Kubernetes Slack. And there'll be people there to help you out for sure.
And then again, I mentioned a little earlier, we kind of had a next steps section on here as well. Once you get a cluster stood up, I would recommend checking that out. Probably don't have enough time for that today. I'm going to show how to tear down that Bootstrap node real quick. But the next steps will kind of show you, hey, these are the steps if you need to scale your cluster up, if you need to, I think we had reconfigure the registry for persistent storage. Some of those are really provided in the form of scripts, but there's also kind of manually documented steps on there if you have more customizations to make. for this right here, just to get rid of that bootstrap node that we had, again, we don't need this to sit around, don't need to pay for it. So go back and just scale it down. I will say, make sure you permanently and persistently update your account bootstrap variable to 0. Setting it here is just kind of ephemeral. It does work well, but it'll get rid of it once I confirm. Yes, if it'll load. There we go. And it'll clean up any lingering like DNS records, anything else that might be associated with it.
Nice.
So, and it's gone. Yeah, I think that's about all I had. I'm surprised.
That's all you got?
100 more. But yeah.
I mean, you don't want to spin up some random VM from somewhere else? No, I'm kidding. Cool. No, JR, this was awesome, man. Thank you, Cody, for coming on, answering questions, telling folks about all the fun credits they can get with Packet so they can go out and bare metal themselves to death.
Right.
So yeah, Rain is in chat as well. She's a Central European time zone person. There's tons of other Packet folks in chat that are also in these same places we told you to go for help. So yeah, we're all in this together, you know, trying to make a you know, wonderful experience for folks to have OpenShift on Packet. And we've done an amazing job in our partnership so far. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see it happen here live.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, guys. Appreciate it. This is fun.
Yeah. Awesome, cool. JR, anything else you want to say on the way out?
Just reading through my notes. Yeah, I think did we cover the like approximate, you know, cost for the current configurations?
No, I don't think we did. We didn't talk about dollars. Let's talk. Yeah, let's.
Oh, yeah.
Do some math on that real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the initial deployment that you end up standing up 4 of our C3 medium nodes. Those are $1.10 an hour, and then 3 worker nodes at $1 an hour. Right, so you're basically looking at $7.40 per hour, all in, which kind of calculates out to about $135 a day. And you'll need to pay for about an hour of that bootstrap node, right? It's an extra dollar just to get this node bootstrap, and then you delete it. So this is bare metal compute, right? These are physical servers behind the scenes. They have, you know, I believe 48 virtual CPUs and 64 gigs of RAM and over a terabyte of storage in them. So they're pretty beefy boxes. And I think like JR mentioned, you could always choose to deploy this at a smaller scale, right? A single worker node possibly, or, you know, can you deploy, and this is my ignorance, can you deploy OpenShift with a single master and a single worker just to get a really small, tight cluster?
Not yet. Working on it.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, cool. Awesome. So folks, tomorrow on the channel, we have a fantastic lineup as I go to my calendar. First thing in the morning, 0900 hours Eastern time, the level up hour with my cohort Langdon White. We're going to be talking about building the perfect tools container. If you need a tools container for your sysadmin hackery into container world, that's what we're going to be talking about then. And then at noon, we have edge computing and industrial manufacturing with Wolfram Richter from Red Hat. And those are our 2 streams tomorrow. Also, next week, KubeCon, we're going to be having on the 17th an all day, well, almost all day, 6-hour live streaming event with OpenShift Commons. So it's going to be a marathon of all fun things, day 0, OpenShift Commons type content. So please register, or not register, please show up for that. Subscribe to the calendar. I will drop the link to that in chat. And we will see y'all next time.